What's up guys, Anfield here. Welcome to the patch 9.16 overview video. We're essentially going to look at the key features of what you can expect with this patch, so you might be better prepared for when it actually hits the live servers. And I'm just going to discuss a few things that you should look for with this new update. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So not exactly a mod, but this is a comparison thing, something that you have to use external sites for previously. So it's nice to have it in the in-game client. You can compare two different tanks without having to use any other site to do so. So yeah, it is what it sounds like. Basically, the green means that that's the highest among all the things you're comparing. So if I select more tier 10s, you'll be able to see the difference. So let's add the 113 for example. You can see that the 113 has the highest standard average damage, excuse me. So that is highest. Then you move to the IS7, that becomes highest, and so that one becomes green. So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of useful, especially I think for newer players that aren't quite so familiar. It does give a lot of the in-depth stats, so you can kind of see which ones are good and which ones are bad. So you don't have to own the tanks to do this. So I think it'll be quite useful for a lot of people. They can kind of figure out for themselves, well, is this a tank that I really want? Do I want a tank that doesn't aim well? Do I want a tank with good DPM? Do I want a tank with good alpha? You get to kind of see this. So it's kind of cool and kind of neat to have it. So here you can see that the vehicle panel is just basically a carousel, 1 level or 2 level, a mod that we've had for a very long time now in the game client, so you don't have to use a mod for it. They changed a little bit of the sounds. You can see here, you can use 2 variants of Sixth Sense, including your own personal variant of Sixth Sense, so you don't have to use a mod for that either. On the feedback section, you can see a lot of things, including the fire direction indicators. The standard one is what we have now. Advanced means that basically you get more information about who's shooting at you. It can be a little overwhelming, so, be careful what you pick. Maybe sometimes too much is not something you really want in terms of information thrown at you at one time. This, of course, is the damage panel, so something that's always been a mod, and I'm amazed to see that we're getting it in this patch. It's almost like Wargaming is listening to me. But battle events, essentially, this just indicates exactly what has happened as they're happening in the battle, and I'll show you a little bit more of this when we actually get into a battle in a second. So, how do the mods look like in game? Well, obviously, this is important because those of you that use mods need to be converted to using the vanilla client, because ultimately what mods you still need. The only two that I still thought needed to be added were the carousel and the damage panel, which have now been added. So yeah, I really don't see the reason to use mods anymore unless you really hate people and want to use XVM stats and ruin Unicom's lives. Shame on you if that is the case. But ultimately, no, I mean, I know there's like aesthetic things, so you might want a different look to the damage panel. So let me know how you kind of feel the look is. Bear in mind there's a little bit of tweaking you can do on the current client, although I haven't seen too much in terms of like changing the color or anything like that, but I'm not entirely sure. But what is interesting is that what you could get previously with normal mods is you would get your damage listed and things like that. So if you did damage, you would know that you've done this damage. However, what you wouldn't know is how much assisted damage you've gotten. But these, the quote-unquote mods that Wargaming have implemented into the client now, they actually do tell you exactly how much assisted your damage you're getting via spotting, for example, which you can see in the clips that I have put up here. You probably already saw it, but yeah, it's really cool because now when you're playing for light tank mission, for example, you know exactly how much spotting you've done, which I think is crazy. I think it's really cool because obviously mods before now couldn't do that, and the reason for that is because all the assisted damage is calculated by the server, and your client doesn't get that information until the after battle stats. So the server calculates it, but it doesn't feed that information to the client. So that's really interesting that Wargaming chose to do that. Now, if you're grinding a Mark of Excellence, it's interesting too, because obviously you know how much assisted you're getting in a battle, which is kind of important too, because obviously it's damage plus assisted. So that's another thing to keep in mind, as well as playing light tanks or doing light tank missions. So really interesting that they chose to add that. Now, the actual, obviously, the incoming damage is quite interesting too, because on NA at least, it was illegal to know what the damage you were taking, what tank was actually firing at you. So that was added into the standard client. So that's interesting too that they've added that. But either way, let me know what you guys think. Specifically those of you that still use mods. You know, will you kind of ditch mods, or will you keep going with mods? And why is that? Is there still a mod that you think needs to be added, or is it just the aesthetic look of your mods that you particularly like or enjoy? Let me know, and I'll be interested to see what you think. So another important update and feature in this coming patch is how quickly tanks are actually rendered on your screen if they're spotted. So I've done a couple tests here so that you can actually see the difference between 9.15 and 9.16. Now the first test is actually kind of relevant to esports as well, because this will make Himmelsdorf attack incredibly difficult, not to mention some other maps as well. So this is when a force is coming off of the hill. So I'm having this pattern come off the hill, and you can see the difference between 9.15 and 9.16. And 9.15, you know, the pattern has time to get away, possibly without getting shot, whereas 9.16 is rendered instantly and can be punished. So that's extra relevant in esports. And finally, I did a quick poke, basically a snapshot poke from the pattern with both patches, and you can just see how quickly the 9.16 pattern renders versus the 9.15. And on to the Paris map. Now, Paris is kind of an interesting map. It has two areas. In the north, it's kind of a medium style-esque kind of area where you might see a lot of mediums go, slash maybe some TDs. In the south, it looks more like a heavy area. There's not a lot of medium coverage over there where you can use little terrain differences and hills and things like that. A lot of side scraping going to go on other things like that. Now, this is a very long segment. I recorded quite a lot, like almost 10 minutes worth of this. So feel free to skip around as much as you want. And I'm not going to commentate purely because it's just a lot. But you'll notice as I play and run around this map, you'll see exactly where I look at as potential interesting positions. So keep that in mind. You know, maybe this area will be useful, but it's always impossible to tell exactly how the map will develop, specifically because, you know, you throw a map onto the main service and then a meta develops, and the meta could be completely weird or unexpected, as you might see. A nice position over here, be like, oh, this is going to be fun to fight over here, and then the area is ignored, you know. So we'll have to see how it sort of develops, but I think it'll be interesting. I'll reserve judgment. Aesthetically, it's quite pleasing, and there's some interesting areas, and I like the idea that there's quite a few different ways you could play the map. What I worry about is there's a lot of bushes and a lot of TD potential areas that could shut down a lot of the flank, but, you know, it might not be the end of the world, and I think that it could be a vision meta map, which could be really nice for light tanks. Again, I do worry about the massive alpha tank destroyers having a really nice time, but we'll have to see whether that really becomes a problem or not. Either way, enjoy. So that about wraps up my video for patch 9.16 test server. This is the first iteration, remember, so things might be changed or tweaked in the future iterations of the test server before we actually get this patch onto the live clients. But I found it really interesting, and I'm pretty optimistic about this patch. I think Wargaming's done a commendable job in a lot of respects and has listened to a lot of things. So, pretty cool from my perspective. But let me know what you guys think. Did you like what you saw in the video in terms of what we can expect in this patch, or were you kind of let down by things? Another thing to, of course, point out is that global chat will be disabled. That means that when you're on a team and you want to talk to the enemy team, you'll no longer be able to do that. You, of course, will be able to talk to your own team, but you won't be able to talk to the other team, which I'm perfectly fine with because it's only toxicity that ever goes into the all chat, so no problem there for me. But let me know what you guys think about that change as well and everything else you saw in the video. Hopefully the video was helpful to you guys and it was useful for you to actually know what's in the patch. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the comments.